That's right.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 Scarborough Board of Education meeting. Can we have the attendance, please?
Yes, Ms. Gammon,
Here.
Mr. Kelleher,
Here.
Ms. Leong,
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Here.
Mr. Mayorino,
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian,
Here.
Ms. Trapani Huff,
Here.
Ms. Bertulia, and Mr. Shumway.
Perfect, thank you. Could everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Great. Agenda item 4.0 are adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments this evening?
No adjustments this evening.
Perfect. Agenda item 5.0 are public comments on agenda items. Is there anybody interested in making public comment? Agenda item 6.0 is the Spotlight Award recognition. I'll turn this over to Jillian.
All right, so we're doing our January award a little bit late, but I believe she is in the audience, so we get to actually present to somebody. But our award this month goes to Carrie Becker. Carrie is a high school English teacher, and she teaches the 9th grade at the high school. And what we heard was that she is an innovative and enthusiastic teacher who is always thinking about how to engage students, and that she's done a number of things with the Portland Stage Company, with the 9th grade teams, with the study of the Romeo and Juliet. And we have a wonderful presentation to share after that. But first, the person who nominated you is, you can go. Sarah Kaufman.
All right.
Sarah has a halo. And so
Yeah.
she provided us with a video. And so that is the next slide. And I'm going to pray.
All right, you want to work here.
We don't have Diane.
Hi, my name is Sarah
Oh,
Kappelman,
yes.
and
Volume.
this video is about my friend and colleague Carrie Becker and why I nominated her for Scarborough School.
Hang on.
And this video is about my friend and colleague
Okay.
Carrie Becker and why I nominated her for Scarborough School's Spotlight Award. Carrie Becker is an amazing educator who consistently goes above and beyond for her students, both inside the classroom and out. Within the classroom, Carrie's always modifying her curriculum, looking for new material that could be more relevant, accessible, diverse for her students. She is constantly seeking feedback. When I taught 2 doors down from her, she was always showing me what she was working on. She'd ask for ideas for new poems that she can incorporate into her poetry unit, new novels to incorporate into her book circle, lit circle unit. And she was always willing to share ideas too. If she had a lesson plan or a unit that went really well, she would be excited about it and she would want to share that with me so that, and her other colleagues, so that we could also have that same kind of success and kind of build off those ideas. And she's always willing to collaborate and look at herself critically and reflect on her own practices, which is just amazing. Outside of the classroom too, Carrie is incredible. So she is the staff person for the GSA club at Scarborough High School, which is, a club that is one of the only safe spaces sometimes that some of these students feel like they have in their schooling career, and Carrie definitely provides that atmosphere for them. She runs the One Acts every year, which is not just at Scarborough High School, but is also a competition with other districts in throughout Maine. She also heads up the annual Shakespeare production that Scarborough High School puts on. She coordinates with the Portland Stage Company multiple times a year to bring them in to help her theater class, as well as her English 9 classes when they're going through their Romeo and Juliet unit, to show students professional actors, introduce students to professional actors and production people, and connect what they're doing in the classroom to the community. She's also set up a playwriting workshop at Scarborough High School and is constantly finding opportunities for students to engage in their various interests relating to reading, writing, and acting. Carrie herself challenges herself with, outside of school, to write plays and to act in plays. So she's not just talking the talk, she's walking the walk, and her students can understand that. She brings that sense of excitement, wonder, self-growth, self-motivation, and vulnerability into the classroom and into all that she does. And her students and her colleagues greatly benefit from having Carrie at Scarborough High School. So great job, Carrie. And I am so grateful to be one of your colleagues and one of your friends. Congrats.
We have a little award to present to you. If you
Hi,
want.
my name is Sarah.
There we go. Come on.
Thank you all for coming. No, thank you.
Kappelman.
Why are you doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
You.
Thank you. Do you guys mind if we slip out?
Before you slip out,
Sure.
did you want to?
Oh,
say anything?
yes.
Yeah, we want it before
No,
you slip
nope,
out.
nope.
Okay.
Please.
I just want to take a moment to congratulate Carrie. I am proud to say I was part of the hiring team. Good job, Sue. And Carrie's just been a wonderful delight. Sure, the bubbly energy you see is what you get every single day. She does do a lot of things that are very important to our students in the building, like GSA, and bringing Shakespeare. The kids that work on that every spring just love it. I get to watch them bound out of the building. They've been on stage for the rehearsal and they come flying out the front doors, and I can see them from my desk as they're chatting about the rehearsal today and what they're going to be doing the next time. And they just have a lot of joy working on that. And Carrie is a big help of bringing that to them. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you. As you like it this spring in the park.
Are there any comments from the board? Almost.
You may go.
Just watch it.
Thank you so much, Sue,
That's
for
it, yeah.
speaking.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item 7.0 is the new school building project update. So this is something new. We're going to start doing from now until or through November. more to educate the board, of course, and then to educate the greater community that's watching as to what is going on and what is this project in small bite-sized pieces that are, like one subject matter per month. So this will be our first one. And really, we're just wanting to start off by saying we are really working hard here in the school board and our building steering committee that is made up of community members to really get this unified school project to referendum in November. That is the goal. So as we start this new year, we just thought this would be a good idea to start putting out these informational updates. Today, I thought it'd be good to start with what it is, when we say unified school and we say a K through 8 strategic plan, what does that really mean? And then talk about the big why, which is why are we doing this? So can you go to the next slide, please? So first, when we talk about the K through 8 strategic plan in unified school, what we are talking about is consolidating the current 3 primary schools that we have into one unified school. So this one piece, the new school, would be part of a greater strategic plan that really encompasses K through 8, grades K through 8. And this is done to address the overcrowding, not just at the primary school level, but also at the middle school level. So those of you that have either attended the middle school, like our student reps, or those that have children in the middle school, know that the entire 6th grade is currently housed in portable classrooms. And they are unable to have classrooms in the building, right? So this plan would address the overcrowding across the district. So currently we have 30 portable classrooms in use across the district. That includes those that I mentioned at the high school, and then that is currently at 12, and then an additional 18 at our primary schools. So the goal would be to eliminate all of our portable classroom usage and really utilize the buildings to their full extent. So what this means is that we would have, currently our primary schools are grade K through 2. The unified school would actually be K through 3. From there, Wentworth would become a 4 through 6 school. The middle school would be a 7-8, grade 7-8, and then our high school would house still the 9 through 12 grades. So this would eliminate, like I said, the use of those portables. Some of those portables are over 20 years old, so they're well beyond their useful life. So this is the plan as it looks. So when we talk about unified school, and we talk about a K through 8 strategic plan, this is overall what we are talking about. Move the next slide. So the next 2 graphs, I want to kind of explain how we got to where we are with the portable school usage. So this graph and the next show our enrollment and our building capacity. So the orange line at the top is our enrollment. If you look at the yellow line that runs up and down vertically through the graph, that is where we are now. All of the orange line to the left of that yellow line is historical enrollment data. All of the orange line to the right of that yellow line is data that we predict. So it's predictions based on an enrollment study that we had done in 2019. So that enrollment study, even though it's a little bit older, it's projected the enrollment out, and that's based on birth rates and based on growth in the town, housing developments that are coming in. So in historical data. So all of that is looked at, and then a prediction is made. So we've actually been trending at the high growth model when you look at that enrollment study. We do have another enrollment study we've asked to have, that we've contracted to be done. We're hoping to have it within the next few weeks. But at any rate, that is the orange line. So that is enrollment data. The blue line at the bottom is the capacity of the school building. So we're talking about the K through 2 current buildings. So that would be what the building could manage without any portable use. So just the buildings. The red line is your capacity with portables included. So when we talk about this, the really big need for this and why this has become such a critical time is that you can see that orange line is above both both of those lines. So even if we were to stop growing right now and nobody else moved into Scarborough with kids, we are currently above capacity in all of our buildings for our current students. So this graph is at the 140 square foot per student, building size. And what that means, that is a state guideline. I mean, excuse me, for when school buildings, elementary school buildings are built in Maine. So that is a state guideline, but it is literally just that. It's a guideline. It's not a requirement. So, what happens is that most of the time when you're building schools, they look at the specific needs of the district and the programming that that district has and the specificities for the area. And so often the schools will come in above the 140 square foot per student number. So the last 5 to 10 years, that number in Maine has been about 150 to 160 square feet per student. That's about where those projects have fallen. So this is the one end, the 140 square foot per student. The next graph is at the high end, which is the 210 square feet per student building size. Either way, we are well over capacity with even with the portables that we would hope to get rid of. So this is in addition to our buildings, you know, some of our buildings are 50 and 60 years old and needs have changed, educational needs, programming needs have changed since those buildings were built. And we are not at a place where we're able to adequately house our students and educate them to the standard we would like to. So are there any questions for me?
I don't have any questions because we've presented this before, but I do want to just make notice that the website is available
Mhm.
so that everyone can find this information. And our contact information is also available on the Scarborough School website. So if
Mhm.
anyone ever wants to talk to any of us about the project, we are usually open to it,
Yeah.
or we can find you the information from the right people.
Absolutely. Good point, Jenna. On the slides that they're previously up there, the website is at the bottom. So thank you for saying that. So it's available on all of the slides. There is a wealth of information there, historical knowledge, I'm sorry, historical data, project meeting dates that are coming up, videos from the previous meetings you can watch to kind of get yourself caught up if you're wanting to learn more about the project. And yes, to your point, I think everybody would be happy to talk to anybody interested. Thank you.
I'd like to
Mhm.
add one thing to what you're
Mhm.
saying. I know, from what I understand, and I've heard from the town council, a lot of maybe reservations might be the right word about the consolidated school versus the, the 3 smaller schools. And I just
Mhm.
want to speak to my experience with going from Blue Point and then up to Wentworth. I don't know if anybody was more nervous about that than I
Mhm.
was. I think my son was more cool with it than me. But it was an amazing experience. There was just no gaps. It just was flawless. And my fears were immediately put to rest because of the way Wentworth is structured and how they have the kids, you know, in their, for lack of a better word, pods, or I
Mhm.
don't know what the right word is, but for me, it became a non-issue right away. And so I don't know if anybody else has those same reservations that I had when my son moved up. Found out very quickly that it went abundantly well. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is I think a real concern for people, of course, and the love of the small school, but to your point, there's that ability to create communities within the school. So it feels like you're still part of a small school, even though it's bigger than what you'd be used to. Yes. Any other questions or comments? All right, so be on the lookout for next month. Maybe we'll discuss the 4th school option at the at the next meeting. I mean, the next month. All right, agenda item 8.0 is the superintendent's report and 8.1 is the quarterly update on student academic progress.
So, yeah, I'm going to use my time this evening. We talked about as part of the Board of Education goals as well about establishing benchmarks for academic progress across the district. And as we've noted in the past, and I have Monique here this evening too, to kind of go through our slides here as well. This has gotten very challenging to kind of chart and strategically set goals for measurable progress, academic progress, given the pandemic. So the spring 2020, there were no standardized assessments or MEAs given. And so that there's a gap kind of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And so it's difficult to, in a longitudinal way, kind of measure and set benchmarks for going into the future. Also, given the fact that the assessment measure that the state now uses for the MEA has changed from measured progress assessments now to the NWEA. But we do have now with 2021 last year and then into this year, a fall to fall analysis that we're going to share with you for and really focus on NWEA for this evening. And there, as you'll note, I'll just note that there's typically, and this is virtually everywhere, and it makes sense, right? Because the NWEA has a fall administration and a spring administration. So you'll see significant differences in the mean, the average of how students do, both in reading and then also in math between that fall administration and spring administration. So, and what we've been able to do, as we've also noted, we're not at a point, at least with the state, to establish benchmarks where we can measure how we're doing versus other cohorts in Maine. But what we have done, and what Monique is going to share with you, is the performance bands, high, average, below standard, kind of where kids fall in each of the grade levels in each of those content areas. But then also, where is that mean scaled score, which is called a RIT for the NWEA? Where does it fall in comparison to the national average? So that gives us a little bit of a sense and benchmark on how we're doing versus the national average. So I'll turn it over to Monique and hopefully advance the slides when she needs me to.
Jeff and I practiced. I was going to give him the evil eye. So why don't we start out with a reading, I believe. If we can go to the first slide, grade 3, this is reading performance. And let me give you a moment to orient to the slides. NWEA, the assessment that the state contracted with NWEA to use is called the MAP growth assessment. So the students take an online test in the fall and they take a similar test in the spring, and it keeps track of where they are. This scaled score, what we call a RIT, is attached to knowledge and skills. And this RIT score is a scaled score. It runs from grade 3, and you'll see it keeps going up and up and up all the way up through grade 8. So it's the same score that we track. NWEA MAP is used across the country, not just as a state assessment, but school districts also contract with NWEA. So it has millions of students and millions of test events over time. So there is a very strong national average. So the blue line there is our national comparison group. We are red, our students' performance. So what you see there is spring of 2021. The national average was a 1.97 something. And then our Scarborough student scored a 200.3. That was the spring of 2021. Why would you start in the spring of 2021? Because that's when the state started and mandated this assessment. They have a 2-year contract with a vendor. So we do have fall, and know that in the fall, those third graders are different students, but we're looking over time, again, different groups of students. In the spring, that is the same group of students. So fall 2021 and spring 2022, those are the same groups of students. And the good news is they grew. So nationally, the students also grew. In the fall, it usually dips. It dips nationally, and locally it dips as well. One of the things you'll notice in this graph particularly is our students didn't dip as much as the national group. You can see how it's a little bit more flat. So that would be the way I would describe it, is that our students didn't dip, their performance didn't dip as much in the fall. And this you'll see as we go through these slides, you'll see this pretty consistently for reading. And we are pretty consistently above the national group. And I'll show you in the situations, couple grade levels where graphs are going to look a little curious. Here's grade 4. You'll notice that the graph bumped up a little. Again, that's the scaled score. We kept the same vertical line from 185 RIT points to 220, so you can kind of see the growth over time. And you'll see that change happen again when Jeff moves to grade 5. But here it's not as, yep, see there, if grade 5 is a little flatter than grade 4. That's fine. But again, if you compare fall 2021 to fall 2022, even though it seems like very small amounts, even our fall to fall growth is increasing, which is good news. Even though it's a different group, they're still performing better. They're growing is the way I like to describe it. Okay, it may not be at the rate we expect or we want to have. We don't know what that is. And we can certainly keep comparing. You'll notice the national average, that 204.1 and that 204.5 of the national group from fall to fall didn't grow very much, but did eke forward a bit. And so that's another way we can see how we compare nationally is, okay, did our kids fall to fall grow a little bit more than national or not? The good news is they're growing. Grade 6. Grade 6 is interesting. That's very flat, the fall dip. If we move to grade 7, 7 is interesting. When the spring 2021 scores came out, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Not, oh my gosh, but what's going on here? And that's what we do when we get this data. What's happening? And we start asking questions. I and Kathy Terrell coordinated some meetings with the English department at the middle school to study the data and say, what's happening here? You know, we're not seeing the growth what we're seeing. We took a look at the curriculum. We reviewed the units that people are supposed to be doing. We talked about what professional development they might need. What are the titles? They worked with the librarians to find more engaging titles. So we started to really start diving into the curriculum pieces. We always also took a look at, okay, how did we schedule these assessments? What were students told about these assessments? You know, it's sit down and take this state assessment. Why is it important to engage? Why is it important to be motivated? And you'll notice there are two things that happen, particularly, well, with any state assessment at all, but as our students get older, it's harder and harder to be motivated. And you'll see that in the 11th grade data. You know, the students at 11th grade, most students are concerned with SATs or AP exams and things. Why should I do my best in this? And the answer is, well, we use this data in order to help make improvements within our schools. But for some students, that may not be enough given all that they've got on their plates. So grade 7, grade 8, same piece, grade 8. Here, when we look at fall to fall, there's a little bit of a decline. So we start asking some questions. What might be going on there? What are we doing in classrooms? Was it as we were implementing the assessment? What was the day? What was going on? These are a little over 200 students sitting down and taking a test that takes hours in some case. Usually we break it out and we try to minimally disrupt the instruction, but it does have an impact on students. That's the reading piece. Here's grade 11 and grade 10. Here's the some of the shifts. So grade 11, obviously our students were not motivated to take the assessment at that point in time. And we actually had very few students opt to take it. There was a little bit of an interesting absentee rate on those days. Students choosing to take care of themselves. You'll see in the fall, the way in which we did it was a little different in the fall. And then in the spring of 2022, I would attribute that to motivation. But again, the teachers have conversations what's going on here as well. Now, the state has decided, because that 2-year contract was up, the state has decided this year is the first year of the new contract, to have the second year students, the 10th graders, take it instead of the 11th grade. The reason for that shift is because there was so much testing in the 11th grade year. In addition to the reading test, the writing test, there's also a science state test. And then for those students who have AP exams and also SATs, it becomes, as Sue Ketch described, I think there was only one day in May in the high school last spring where there was no testing going on.
Well, and also pre-COVID, or it goes a few years even before that, the results that were used for the MEA was the SAT. So all Maine students in 11th
Yes.
grade took the SAT.
So the motivation piece was built in there for most of our students. So they moved to grade 10 for a couple of different reasons. One is the motivation piece, pulling it out from the 11th grade year. The other piece of that is about 65% of the districts in Maine, as reported by the DOE, actually had contracted with the NWEA before this change. And so they were recommending the 10th grade year because they're assessing all the way up through using the NWEA, including 9th grade year. So for them, they could continue to track progress. For the other districts who, like ours, we were not using the NWEA, there was no progress for us to track. The other piece that is shifting is that part of the federal requirement is that state tests have to align to the state standards. The NWA MAP progress test doesn't do that. It does a great job of showing growth, but it does not give us any feedback on where our students are in relation to state standards. That is a federal requirement. They sought a waiver. They didn't get the waiver. So that's why they are switching now. We are no longer going to be using the MAP assessment this spring. We are going to be using another NWEA product specially designed so that we can try to compare those writs, but also gives us some information about our student performance related to standards. So some of the items are going to be connected to standards so that we can see where our students perform in relation to standards. The downside of that is we aren't going to have any scores this spring, which is truly, it's a tough one because we want to celebrate our students' growth. And we want to look at the data and we want that longitudinal data. We won't have it. The information I have from the state is that they will provide us, they're hoping to provide us with that data around July, sometime late July, because what they have to do with that data is to calibrate and align to those standards and develop those achievement levels. And that just takes time with the data. We also have a federal grant deadline, August 1st, in which we need that data in order to be able to set goals for the coming year. So it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy year in terms of having what we need to kind of keep moving forward with our grant process. Questions?
So I just want to be clear. So are the students not taking the test in the spring or they're
They are
taking a
taking
new
the
test?
They are, they're taking a test. It will be a new test. To them, it will look very similar to what they've done before. But it is a different assessment. It's still going to be adaptive. It is supposed to remember where they were so that the items will adjust. Some of those items will adjust. The 10th graders, that will be less adaptive. Mostly because this RIT score that they've developed and that all of this is based on, it becomes harder and harder to show growth. You notice that there was significant growth in the early elementary years, a lot of learning and those steps take place. As students go through middle school and high school, it levels off. You seeing 1 or 2 or 3 RIT point growth is huge compared to maybe only a couple. So other questions at this point before we take a look at math? So that's why this graph looks like it does.
I have a quick question. You'd mentioned about use the data to apply for grants. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What are those
We
grants?
receive federal funding,
Okay.
Title I. Title II for professional development, and Title I provides additional staffing to help support students. Blue Point School receives that funding this year. It's based on free and reduced lunch. In order to apply for that grant, we need to set district goals. There needs to be a math goal. There needs to be a literacy goal or a reading goal. We also have a social emotional learning goal for that. And so in order to track our progress towards those goals, we need the data in which to do so. And every district in the state uses the state data in order to do that. So, and the state is aware of it. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on that. They're trying to get us the data as quickly as they can, but they do need to do this calibration piece. So either I'm in touch with, I sit in on the DOE meetings to see, does this mean that the grant deadline might shift? Will it be okay if we're late? How do we proceed without the state data?
Your
Can we
diplomacy
amend
skills
those?
are exceptional. Just gonna throw that out there.
I have communicated a lot to the state over the years. Are we ready for math? Oh, the performance pieces. All right, reading. This is another viewpoint that we get. So because this is normative data, what they do is they divide out the students across a continuum in percentile groupings. So the red grouping is the lowest percentile. It's 21 and below. The orange is low average, 21st percentile to 40th. The yellow is average, 41st to 60th. And then there's a high average, which is the green, which is 61st to 80. And then the high is 80, should be 81 on up. So one of the ways in which we look at this data, this tells us the percentage of our local students and where they fall against that normed group. So for example, I like to set a high bar. So what I like to do is I look at that line between the yellow and the green. The line between the yellow and the green tells me the total percentage of students who are high, our students who would compare to the high and high average. So for me, what I do, particularly fall, if you look at fall 2021, that would be 35 and 29. That'd be 66% of our students score in that range. Okay, so our students do generally well. Different way of looking at the red dots piece. It kind of shows you the distribution of where our students fall. We spend a lot of time looking at the orange and the red because those students, we identify who those students are, what services and supports they're getting to help move them into the yellow and the green and the blue. So what we've noticed with reading is if we compare fall 2021 to fall 2022, in every case in reading, the percentage of our students in that green and blue has gone up, which is the good news. Again, I go back to the summary statement is our students are growing. It may not be as much as we want. It may not be, we obviously want our oranges and our reds to be 0. That's when we stop trying. So what we do is we look across the grade levels. And again, it's the same kind of thing. The spring 2021, that's a different group of students than the fall 21, spring 22. Fall 21 to spring 22, those are the same groups of students. So you can see where there are more yellow, green, blue in that spring of 2022. Are we ready for math and you'll see the same, if you have a chance to look at this afterwards, you'll see the same issue with the 10th grade and the 11th grade, just a different bar graph. So for mathematics, the same sort of thing in the data, as we look at this very short trend data, you will not see the same sort of, you will see from fall to fall with some groups has gone up and some groups has gone down a little bit. Again, middle school, we have questions about the math pieces. We're seeing data that is unusual for us, and we're starting to ask lots of questions around the math. We may want to start taking, when data starts to look erratic over grade levels, that's an indicator we need to start taking a deeper look. Is it that people are supplementing the curriculum too much? Do they need more professional development? We start asking lots of questions. Is it time to do a review of the instructional materials and the methodology? So we look at this data. We also look at classroom-based data as well, and we're trying to track that. We have common assessments that we can look at. And we can also certainly have conversations with classroom teachers around that as well. So the math was interesting because every other grade level, the fall to fall comparison, one group went up a little, the other group went down a little. One group went up, it was kind of rare. So we have the team studying the data, and you see that in the blues and greens in these charts as well. It's erratic. We would rather see that consistency of increase of the students in the greens and the blues, certainly from fall to spring, but also fall to fall. We want to see that change, and it's just a little bit more erratic. There's nothing drastic happening, but it's just got us asking some questions.
So when the teachers are looking at the data and asking questions, have they come up with a reasoning that they think the data is erratic?
It depends. To do a really deep study and analysis takes chunks of time for teachers to review the data and then go in and look at individual data and compare data sets. We don't have chunks of time like that within our calendars. So some schools have had data teams come together over the summer to do some of that work. But what we try and do with that is, okay, what can you control? How do we look at the data? And this is some of the work that the coaches do with data coaching, is when a teacher is sitting down to do an instructional unit. Okay, where are your kids at right now? What are your goals for the lesson? They might go in and help the teacher or work with the teacher. And then after the lesson, okay, where are the students now? What have we done differently? Did that work? Who's got the learning targets? Who doesn't have that? What are we going to do? So it's different levels of things. It's hard to draw huge conclusions off such, we look at trend data. I want at least 3 years. I want to see what that pattern is, or we look at cohorts over 3 or 4 years, follow the same group of students. And that's been the frustration with the state shifting gears over the past few years. And then there was a pandemic, in all honesty,
Right.
Everyone experienced stress. We know stress impacts our working memory. We know we have students who are still struggling. They're learning how to do this thing called school. Yes, we do have these academic expectations, but if we don't deal with the foundational pieces and those conditions for learning, it's going to be erratic. So
Right.
It's a
And-
bigger picture than just delivering more curriculum at students.
Well, and the challenge too is, as Monique has pointed out, there needs to be, a consistent measuring tool, right? On where the students are and where their skills are. And then that tool that you're in measuring that performance also has to be aligned to the standards, the main learning results that all of our units are designed to meet. And if those two things aren't synced or in sync, then it becomes very difficult to use that data effectively. So there's a lot there.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, in some respects, the federal law requires individual data, student data, and that's why these tests are so long. You've got to have enough items in order to provide that data per student. The essential question for us, how are our kids doing, is a valid one. But couldn't we possibly get there with shorter tests or sampling so that not all students need to be tested with that length? And we could still have over time enough data to draw conclusions and make changes without having to impact so many students with such a large in-depth amount of time for testing. That's the part that I struggle with, but that's the federal requirement.
Can I ask a question? So you mentioned and makes sense, you'd like at least 3 years of data in order to really see how things are going, is that by the time you get 3 years of data, especially in middle school, the kids are now on to high school, right? So are you getting, or historically, has there been a line of communication between the middle school and the high school to say, our high school algebra teachers are realizing that kids are really missing X, Y, and Z, which should have been covered in middle school? And is that getting back to the middle school teachers, I guess?
Yeah, back in the days when subs were more plentiful, I used to pull every content area, a sample group of every content area together, K-12 for a full day. And that's where we started. We would start with things, what are you seeing? And we would have cross-phase level conversations. What's the good news? What are you seeing in the students? And while that's qualitative, we also have the data that they're looking at. But also, okay, what is your one wish? What would be more helpful to have? What should we focus on more at a grade level? And certainly the core curriculum materials that we use really lay that out. And the coaches across the phase levels will get together, and the content, particularly for math and literacy, not all areas, will get together and make sure that their instructional planners lay out what those expectations are. But it's always valuable to get folks together across phase levels to have those conversations.
That's a really good question. And I would just also add, mentioning the importance of 3 years of data also allows you to track a cohort of students.
Yeah.
So at Wentworth, from 3rd to 4th to 5th, the same kids, right? Or 6, 7, 8 in the middle school. Having that 3 consecutive years allows for that grade to grade and cohort to cohort, but then being able to follow the kid all the way through, the same kids, same groups of kids, is super helpful.
So these, you've heard me talk about these. These are basically just the summary observations that we talked about. Our students are generally perform above the national average, fall to fall. It's improving, may not be as much as we want. And then fall to fall, there's a little less loss, particularly for reading, more consistently in reading. And then the high average high is generally above 50% in math and generally above 60% in reading. If you way back when we used to use NWEA, I've been here long enough to know that our students are performing sort of at the same levels as they did when we used to use this. We used to use in this district the MAP assessment years ago. And our students are still performing at that same rate, which was really good to see and hear post-pandemic, is that, we really want to focus on their growing, not necessarily, the comparison hasn't changed, which is good. Even in our post-pandemic, these norms are pre-pandemic.
So with the new test, you said it will carry over from student, or the expectation is that it'll carry over. Their data will carry over. So you should
The adaptive,
be able to
yes.
make these comparisons.
That's what we've been told.
Okay.
That's what we've been told, but there will be additional items in there. So it may not, all depends on how they do the statistics, quite frankly, and whether or not we're going to get a separate score for the growth or whether it will be all one combined score. They aren't able to tell us that yet,
So is
or I
it
haven't heard.
potential, is there the potential that you really won't have 3 years until like 2027?
I hope not.
If they
You
change,
think
if they
if
change
they-
the test again.
Yeah, because you're having this new
Which we're
version of
hoping they
it,
don't.
right? This new version of
Yeah,
that
it's called a
test to meet the
through-year
standards.
assessment.
Yeah, so it potentially, I mean, hopefully not, but potentially it
Hopefully
could
not.
be.
Hopefully not.
Wow.
I'm hoping not.
Are there any other questions for Monique? Or Jeff? Yeah. Thank you so much for
You're
that.
very welcome. Our DOE meetings are just starting up where I'm going to get a lot more detail about these assessments. I'm happy to report back at some point in time.
Yeah, that would
Thank
be
you so
great.
much for your time.
Thank you. All right. Oh, I don't think, are you? do you have more in your superintendent report?
That's it.
Thank you. Okay.
I just have to advance the slide.
Agenda item 9.0 is the chair's report, and I know we have pretty robust committee reports, excuse me. So mine is not too long. Just two things at our last workshop, we worked on our board, school board goals that will carry us from now until June. And so we will vote on those later tonight that we worked on. And then our upcoming workshop is February 16th at our next board meeting. That one, we are going to talk about recording committee meetings. So my question to you is, given the robust conversation we had when we started the conversation, I'm wondering if we should start that workshop at 5:30 instead of 6, just so we're not super crunched for time. Does that sound okay? Okay, so let's plan on that. So at 5:30 on the 16th, then we'll start the workshop with our school board meeting to follow. All right. Agenda item 10.0 are the committee reports. So we'll start with Carolyn and the Finance Committee.
All right, thank you. So we had our meeting back on the 23rd, and Kate did a wonderful job going through the financial package for the year. We are about halfway through the year. And according to the deck, we're about 43% of our budget has been spent, and that is pretty much in alignment with where things have been in the past. And there was really nothing of significance that came out of the review and her in-depth knowledge of the numbers that gave cause for alarm. What the finance team is focusing on right now is they're finalizing their portion of the town audit. They're diving into the 2024 budget. I saw her last night. She seemed quite tired, so I'm thinking she's been in it quite heavy. And if you go to the agenda that is on the website, you can, if you want more details, you can dive into that. I did want to share, she shared a really nice story that just really, I thought spoke volumes about the town of Scarborough and how we do things here. And I was very pleased. So if you don't mind, I'll share that. The school has a backpack program, which allows the nutrition program to send, kids who might be at risk of, not having food or steady meals over the weekends or in the evenings to go home with a backpack of food to provide for them. And so when we had the new Mainers at the, I think it's Comfort Inn. And so, they've been transitioning to other places through December and through now. There were some that were still there that were beginning to fall through the cracks and maybe not receiving the nutrition that they needed. So whether the kids were in the school or if it was families that didn't have children in the school. So the nutrition program through the school was able to provide the backpack program for the children who were living there at the Comfort Inn. And then the town is also chipped in and was able to help the families that were there that were falling through the cracks and not receiving the proper nutrition that they needed. So I wanted to bring that up, and I think it's a lovely story and just a lovely statement about our town and our community. So I wanted to get on everybody's agenda. We've got some big budget presentation meetings coming up. And so I want to get those out there for everybody. We've got the 13th, 4:30 to 7, the 15th of March, 8:30 to 11 in the morning. Then we have the formal presentation to the school board on our regular scheduled meeting of the 16th. And then a presentation to the town council on the 29th. There's a lot more meetings, but those were some of the highlights. So I just wanted to share that. It's going to be a big lift coming up month of February and March. So our next meeting is March 6th. We were supposed to meet the end of February. I'm not going to be in town, and we moved it to March 6th, and that will give them just a little more time to have a better, more finalized numbers for the for the FY '24 budget. So that's our plan.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions for Carolyn? So I just wanted to add two things, or one thing on the two dates, the 13th and the 15th. Those are just for everybody to kind of know the process. That's the time when the staff comes and makes presentations to us. And essentially what they're doing is explaining their asks, right? And the process they went through to get to the ask. So it's a really great opportunity to hear from the staff members really and the leadership team on the process they took. I thought it was very fascinating last year. It was a little bit of a different approach, which was really that Jeff led, really looking at it as a district wide, like these are my needs, but really also looking at the bigger picture, like what does this district need and what do that might be bigger than what I need right now. So it was a really I found it to be a really fascinating 2 days. So definitely get those on your calendar. All right, policy, Layla.
So the policy committee met on January 9th. We had some public members attend and offer comment, which was greatly appreciated. We obviously addressed the bomb threat policy, which we voted on last meeting. And we started our work on our transgender and gender expansive student policy. That work is ongoing, and I expect it to take most of the next meeting, at least, if not beyond that. We'll see what we get to. That next meeting is on Monday from 4:30 to 6. It's a hybrid meeting. It's going to be held here in the town council chambers. And folks can tune in online or be here to let us know what they are thinking. Other agenda items, we're going to talk about the 23-24 school calendar to make things even more interesting. We're going to continue our work, and then we'll head to the naming of the facilities. But that's the work that we're doing.
Questions? Great. Curriculum, Ryan.
So we've had some conflicts with scheduling. So our first meeting is coming up next week. It's going to be via Zoom. So everything is online, at least for this first meeting. There's a couple things that we're going to be talking about that first meeting with Monique. So very much if you found tonight interesting with all of her statistics, and if you ever want to tune into one of our meetings, we're going to take diver deep and deeper discussion into that.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions for Brian? All right, communications, Jillian.
So we had our last meeting, January 12th. We have a lot to discuss.
Sorry, mine isn't on. We have another meeting coming up next, and it's next Thursday, second Thursday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Most of these will be over Zoom. We had some goals for the upcoming year. One is just generally increasing communication, offering a variety of forms of communication, not more emails, in other words. And then we discussed roundtable discussions, which I'll discuss a little more at the next slide. And we will continue to encourage board members and committee chairs to share with us what they would like to communicate with the district. And then we've been just working on developing and organizing forms. And for instance, we had the communications request form. I think all of the board received that. And we are going to continue to update and continue to request spotlight awards. Nominations. Anyway, next slide. And so we discussed at length the option to have some roundtable discussions. The town council does this currently. It's a lot to unpack, but what we're looking to do is have a couple of board members, anybody from the public, anybody at all is welcome to join. There can't be more than 3 board members, I think is the goal. So, but you're welcome to watch online if or join, as long as we have some conversation ahead of time. And then occasionally we'd like to combine with the town council, and we have a current goal to combine forces with the building steering committee, communications committee, as an all hands on deck approach. So the discussions will be informal. We will advertise, topic suggestions, but we're not going to be sticking to them if that's not what people want to discuss. We will be focusing for now a lot on the building project. There will be a lot of questions from the community, and hopefully people will be engaged. We suggested Facebook, the school newsletter, and the town newsletter as ways to communicate these roundtable discussions. And we will be taking suggestions. So if you have something that's coming up that you think that people would like to discuss, we're happy to advertise that. The goal will be quarterly. Obviously, over the summer, that might not be as an attractive an option for people who are wanting to be not in school. And so where to be determined, we've talked about having a variety of places, probably at least to start town hall or at the schools. Why? We want to increase community engagement. It allows the community members to discuss what they want to discuss. It's hard when people come here and they have something to say, but and they say it, and we all, nod our heads and say thank you, but it's not a two-way conversation, and that people have frequently said is frustrating. And so it'll be just open but moderated. We'll give norms at the beginning, no name calling, pretty loose. So it'll be very informal. And just the goals are to explore topics that attendees want to discuss. And that is it.
All right, thank you, Jillian. If there's any questions and discussion on this, I would ask us to wait because we are going to vote on this in new business, and that's when we would have the conversation. But are there any questions about Jillian's, anything else, Jillian? All right, thank you. So long range facilities, John?
Yes, thank you. We had our meeting on January 25th where we discussed different projects that are upcoming that, either improvements or updates that need to happen. Some are in place. The boilers at, I believe it's Pleasant Hill, or is it Blue Point? I don't know. I think they both need to be replaced, and one of them's going to happen this summer. And the other is, it's trying to figure out when the money's going to be there. So we'll get to it when they get to it. Heat pumps at the middle school. There's playground equipment at the primary schools that needs to be replaced. If you've ever driven to the middle school, Quentin drives a good time. And then also the parking lot, they're looking at repaving those. Todd's gonna assemble a budget request and see what he can get for money and what we can then do with it. So we're gonna meet coming up on the 8th of March, and he's gonna have a better idea of what he's gonna be able to be asking for. And then we've discussed that we have to, with the consolidated school going on, we have to have just a plan B just in case, which we hope doesn't happen. But if it does, we obviously don't want to be caught with our pants down. So we're gonna start working on what we've got to do to. I don't even know what. I thought my mind is going to explode, but we'll start that.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions for John?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think actually from what you just said with the backup plan for the consolidated school, it might be extremely helpful to have a rough figure or idea about what projects would be coming down the pike in the next decade. or 8 years, sort of projecting out sort of the costs that are going to be associated with delay, because I think that's not a factor that people are thinking about. Sort of like it's working for now, so we hear a lot about why not wait a year, push off the vote another year. But there is a cost associated with that, and I think if people had the dollar amount, it might, or in some of the projects, like replacing boilers for Pleasant Hill seems like a monumental waste of energy and time and expense for a school that like needs to be replaced. And then the Blue Point's behind it. I think we did 8 Corners last year. So we're putting boilers in schools that are absolutely insufficient and we're trying to replace, and that money is an actual loss. I mean, we're just racking up losses. And I think if we can quantify it, that would be a helpful part of the conversation.
No, and that's a good point. But one thing that, when we were talking in the meeting, Todd said, we have these buildings now. We don't know what's going to happen with them. So, and if we do have the new school, we'll still have these buildings. Maybe they'll use them as a community center. Maybe they'll sell them or whatever. But maintaining them, we don't want to, let them run into the, run to the ground. So it's, yes, you have to put money into it, but I wouldn't consider it a waste because we're still going to have the buildings. We don't know what's going to happen with them. And so we still have to maintain them, because even if we're going to sell them or do what we're going to do with them, other than tear them down, I guess that would be the one thing if we're doing that. But we do want to make sure that they're in, especially since they're going to be holding kids for the next few years at the very least. So we want to make sure that everything, you don't want to go through winter in Maine without, your heat, because you can't. But that's a good, it's a good question to ask and get the information out there as to, okay, what are we going to be doing? And
So to tag along to that, something else that came up in the meeting, which kind of speaks to what you're saying, is since I also sit on the building steering committee and I'm on that committee, I was thinking about the building steering committee. And so I had asked during that meeting dealing with the playground can we take any of that with us? And so that is something that it sounds like can be and has actually been done in the district before. So it sounds like it's a little time consuming to do, but it sounds possible. So there are certain things that I think we're already starting to have some of that conversation there. And, it helps that we have somebody who knows our facility so well and has done so many of these things already. So, instantly, part of the thing with the playground too, is that I think that issue was to make it more ADA compliant, which is part of the issue right now with that one. But, at least it knows, that conversation's happening. So I agree though, that data would be really good to share with both the public and town council. And I think that if we can get some of those numbers from Todd as to what he projects, because he is projecting stuff. He brought it up in that meeting that he already projects as to how long the life of certain things are. That might actually, help our case as well with showing why, it is more cost effective to maybe go the route of a consolidated school.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to be clear. I absolutely we have to maintain the buildings. I will look forward to at some point maybe moving them off the school budget and making them someone else's budget issue. I think that would be that would be helpful. No, but I'm really clear. I really want to be able to say to the public when they ask why, that it's not free to these buildings are not free to operate. Like, it's not like everything's hunky dory. Like, we are putting a lot of money in maintenance. And if we can quantify that and say, we put X million dollars in maintenance this year, we project putting $10 million in maintenance in the next 10 years. That's money that we could put into a school that we all agree has to be built, because everybody's agreed that something has to change. There's no one's fighting that battle. So we all, but it's the battle is what needs to change. And I think there's this feeling that we're good. Like, we can just maintain for a little while longer till we get this perfect plan together. And so I think one piece of the conversation that I haven't heard is we're going to spend $15 million. Well, you dither about micromanaging questions that have been answered 7 years ago in 2 years.
Yeah, and I would add even onto that, because when you're thinking long range, like, I love this idea of getting this quantified and asking Todd to work on this. The other piece I would add in there, the cost of doing nothing, is how do we get those buildings up to where they need to be? So it's not only maintenance, it's not only replacing playground equipment, boilers, this, that, and the other. It's how do we make our windows navigable for children to get out of should they need to? How do we install safety vestibules at the school? What are those costs that are incurred too? So when you guys have this conversation with him and you guys start, or he starts this report, or this project or calculation perhaps is the better word. I would love to see that included in there as well.
I'll get on it right away. I'm sure Todd's gonna be very excited.
Yeah. And he also, he also is on both committees and of course, like, you
Elected
know,
work,
yeah.
throw
so
it his way.
he's probably, you know, I know he's already got it in his head and, but
Is there a running list of things that like are just, they need to be done, but then there's obviously a regular maintenance schedule? Is there a running list,
It's
a
all-
5-year?
Yeah, he's got things that he knows has to get done, and then it depends on money, and then, you know, it's a priority, you know, like the road has just kept getting pushed back because something else is coming, you know, paving the parking lot and doing the road has taken a back seat to boilers and, you know, other things that, all right, you're gonna drive a little slower and it's, you know, gonna be a little bumpier for you, but you can still get there as long as you're not taking your covered wagon.
yeah, and I think a lot of it is a budgetary process too, right? Like when you're scaling back or when we're asked to scale back, that's what happens, right? Some of those projects go by the wayside to the point of Quinton Drive, right? That was one that we lost last year. Yeah. Any more questions for John? All right. DEI committee is next, which is Jillian and Freyla.
I'll go ahead. I put in the notes. So we opened with a passage from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. This time we went through that. We do updates from everybody in those meetings. So we start with the board leadership council, school buildings on an kind of individual level, and then the Civil Rights Club talk about student projects that have happened in the school. They do that. There's often visuals, audio visual that goes along with that, and like videos, which is really interesting to see. Gives you a window into the school, which is cool. We discussed the transgender and gender expansive policy proposal. The policy committee last fall, which was not a part of at the time, expressly asked that this committee look at this policy before we finalized it. And so it was important for me to finish that work. And so there was a robust discussion ongoing about different aspects of the policy. And our next meeting is February 7th. It's always the high school AP room, and it's always in hybrid format for anyone who wants to join us.
It's at 7, right? 7 p.m.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or
Yeah, no, it's
5:30?
at 5:30, 5:30
5:30
to 7. I should have put the time in. I'll put that next time.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, building steering committee is Jillian and Brian.
I'll present it. All right, so the last meetings were with the town council and the board on January 19th. That was an executive discussion to discuss updated land information. The committee, the full committee, building steering committee met on the 24th. We discussed communication, community engagement, and adequate information that needs to about the needs and the solution, and basically being able to present with to the town council. And then yesterday we had the joint town council and school board workshop. And there were, again, more updates on the project process and answering a lot of questions that the town councilors had for us. The one request that we have for the school board is that school board members maybe think about looking at what subcommittees are the building steering committee has and think about joining one. We need all hands on deck at this point. And also it's really helpful to get those pieces of information all flowing, you know, in a reasonable amount of time from the individual committees. There's a lot of work being done that is not necessarily all able to be presented at every meeting. So anyway, we think that would be very helpful. And so I just put on there a little bit of like anybody who needs to get to the building steering committee website. You can go to the Scarborough Public Schools website, and there is a quick button or, you know, a link, a button link. I don't know what you want to call it, but in my world, it's a quick button. And that's right to the Building Steering Committee website. And there's a wealth of information, as has been mentioned.
So I would just add on to that, that with the request to the school board for getting involved, it's even as involved as if you're, you know, you can't attend, but you can watch something to do with the subcommittee afterwards would be valuable to us, because then you can give that input. There's a lot of real natural crossover to the committees that we already have, the long range planning committee. You know, there's value there because we're talking about what could be in the new building and what that would deal with in terms of saving us money, or what might be better in terms of maintenance. And so there's been some good discussion in there about a whole bunch of different things that directly relate to what we're already doing. And I think actually might make things, I'm thinking finance is one, long range planning is another. It might actually make your jobs a little bit easier moving forward if you were in tune with it. And then later you don't have to get, say, caught up with some of those conversations. So that's kind of, and then the communication piece. Obviously, Jillian is on this board and then she's the communications chair, but we mentioned that too, just because it has been such a hot topic for us with town council. And then here talking about the whole building project of, hey, communication is key. So that seems like one area that we talked a lot about during our last meeting and really needs a focus. But, you know, everybody's aware of that, right? We all know that it's all hands on deck in terms of our communication. So anything you can do to kind of, you know, get up to speed on what we're doing there helps, just because not everything that we're doing there is able to be translated into our presentation, say with town council, just because we have limited times with them.
Thank you. That's excellent. I mean, and also maybe if people have things that they're willing to do with the communications, we have a little worksheet that we use to assign different tasks. So everybody knows who's doing what. If you want to be added to that, happy to add you.
Yeah, and I will add on just a little bit. John Anderson, the town council chair, and I talked today, just kind of debriefing yesterday and how it went. So and thoughts on action items and next steps. So we have some things that we certainly can be doing, that we're working on. And when I say we, I mean Dana and Lisa from Harriman, some numbers that they want to see. They want to see some refreshed data. So we're working on providing them that. One of the things that did come out of that conversation that was new news to me was that the town council has generously offered us one of their monthly newsletter, one of their monthly Scarborough leader spots. So we are able to use that once a month and write an article about the building. So Jeff and I immediately talked, and Jeff is going to take the first one. So starting in February, once a month, we have a 300 to 500 word spot to write an article about the building. So Jeff took February. I did send an email to everybody asking if there was volunteers to write. Jenna graciously agreed to do March. So we're on a roll. We have two going. It will be in that spot that we're taking is in the last week of the month, every month. So that's really exciting news. That will, you know, on the communications front that will get started. All right. Are there any liaison reports? Yes.
I had the pleasure of talking to Kelly Murphy. She's our house rep and she is on the education committee for the house this year. They obviously got started last year. Cloture closed at the end of the year. So December 31st, the last date for legislators to submit bills. And the house committees have undergone their work. The education committee is meeting a lot. She's there really late. She was driving home when I talked to her and it was way past when I got home. So she was working hard and they're undergoing some work. They passed out a couple of bills so far. Nothing huge that's on the radar yet. But it's a very active committee. There's a lot of bills before them right now. They cleaned up some language, and the only thing of note was that there's an issue with funding for adult education going to age 22. And currently, the school districts are required to provide education for special education students up to 21. So there's a possibility of an increased year for certain students. I don't know what the impact would be in this district. But that could be a financial consideration if that was a requirement going forward.
Thank you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to talk about the DEMT meeting?
And I thought about it too. So anybody who is not familiar with the DEMT meeting, very interesting group of people. You have school principals, assistant principals on there from various schools within the district. We have various. Thank you. We have various police officers and firemen. It's really takes everything into account from a safety and emergency management standpoint. And so you get everybody kind of gets a little bit of a say in contributing. The one thing I would say, so we spent a lot of time debriefing on the Sanford incident, getting a full debrief as to how that went down and how the communication could be better, or how it was good in some ways. You know, Jeff gave a great kind of rundown of what his day was like during, you know, those couple moments and how quickly we have to be able to respond in some instances because how quickly news gets out. And it's just, I mean, it's just a different world from, you know, when we all went to school because of social media. And for those of you who don't know, I'm also in the fire department. So for me, I like this particular role because I feel like I can think from that particular angle too and making contributions to this board. But it's challenging from a teacher standpoint. You know, there were fears and concerns that were expressed during that meeting as a teacher and not knowing, you know, what was going on, and teachers literally in our own district were being told something that wasn't true. And so it's like, okay, well, where did you get your information from? But a lot of it was coming from social media. And so it was, you know, it's something that the group itself really did a great job of talking about action items, being proactive, moving forward and figuring out how can we keep our kids feeling safe? How as a group, you know, can everybody feel like they're better prepared moving forward? God forbid an incident like that, you know, hits home. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
I know it was a fascinating case because in the Sanford example, you know, there are hoaxes and there are threats and there are those things, but the unique part of it was the hoax was that the event was already underway. So you didn't have time as a first responder or as a police department or as emergency personnel. You didn't have time to check whether or not it was how the credibility you went, right? And that's kind of, and they went all the way through that experience, even though it wasn't real or it was a hoax. It certainly was, the response was very real and the event was very real in that sense.
Yeah, I would add on what it sounds like the schools are already doing is really good. And so we talked about what is ALICE, which is something that, you know, is pushed in many schools. Not every school has adopted it, but it's something that it's good to be aware of. It's a movement where, you know, you try to proactively get out of the classroom if you can, but at the same time, you keep your kids safe. If you're in the classroom, they mentioned that because Sanford implements the ALICE program, they noticed they were trying to get into certain classrooms and they couldn't. And then there were blockades there and all of that is part of that program. So, I mean, the one big thing I would say is if there's ever questions or things that you have or concerns that you hear either from the community or you guys have that you would like brought up and addressed there, it's a great forum for me to bring that to because you have all of the key players in town here.
Thank you.
When is the next meeting?
Give me 1 second. I think I have May 20. No. I'll get back to you on that. I have to look, because I wrote down May 24th because it changes location, but I think there's one before then.
Just, I think it would be helpful if you gave a reminder for any of us.
Yep.
To provide questions
Mhm.
for you to bring to the table for that time.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know in advance. That's a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, Miss Yulia and Mr. Colby. Right over to you.
All right, so I'll start off with this. I guess Blue Point had a sledding day in gym class. It's just a lighthearted start to this. And then next up, so a lot of stuff is going on at Wentworth. They just finished their first session of their co-curricular activities. And in this picture right here, that's their final performance in the dance club. And I didn't know this, like when I went to Wentworth, there were a lot of clubs, but it seems like there's even more now. I'm not even listing all of them, but they got a photography club, a chess club, chorus club, world language club, marimba club, law enforcement club, and several more. And over here, I put a link into what happens in the law, like just a outline for what happens in the law enforcement club. And this looks pretty cool. It's pretty, I don't think this club has happened yet. I think it happens in the next session, but they're partnering up with an officer and they're leading this. And Wentworth kids will get to do that. It looks fun. I think I did something like that in middle school, but then it got canceled because of COVID. But I don't know. There was like 2 meetings, but yeah, it's good to see that the Wentworth kids are having this.
Moving on to the high school, we have quite some news for the semester as a whole. We had a lot of scholastic art competition winners this year. We have a lot of talented art students. And so Grace Black won 2 Gold Key Awards in photography. Brenna Casey won a Silver Key in drawing and illustration, a Silver Key in digital art, a Gold Key in film and animation, and the Gold Key stop motion film Clay has been nominated for an American Vision Award. Wow. Tanner Johnson won an honorable mention in photography, and Anita Smith won both a gold and silver key in painting, a gold key and 2 honorable mentions in digital art, a gold key in comic art, and a silver key in portfolio award. Calvin Venegoni Ranger won an honorable mention in photography, and Maya Vinson won a gold in drawing and illustrations, and her winning piece, Fallen, has also been nominated for an American Vision Award. So a lot of awards going to our art students. On the next slide, Ms. Ship shared some things that the Civil Rights Club has been doing recently. And so they've been doing a lot of outreach to K-12. They met with a lot of the primary school kids and really sort of began starting a sense of shared community with those younger children. And they showed a lot of pictures. It looks really fun for all of the people involved. On the next slide is another initiative they've taken. And we can actually see that right when we walk into the building at the high school. It's a periodic table, but for Black History Month. So each element is a key figure. That looks really cool. For VEX Robotics, all 4 of our teams are heading to state championship. That'll be on February 25th. So we'll see how they do. But at the past meet, 3 of the 4 teams were in the top 4, so it looks like they have a very solid shot. For the Career Pathways program, recently a lot of the ELOs closed up for the first semester. And since it is a new program, it really has been very successful. And it was very cool to see. There were a lot of internships and a lot of companies involved. I just finished up one myself for learning a new coding language, and Ms. Savasnik was very helpful with organizing everything, and we did a lot of cool stuff. And there isn't a slide for this because it happened last night, but we had the NHS induction ceremony last night. And so Colby was inducted, And most of us seniors got put on the spot to read a bunch of speeches about a lot of wonderful volunteer and leadership opportunities though. So that was very wonderful to hear.
Oh, very cool. Congratulations, Colby. That's awesome. Very. All right, thank you both so much. Lots of exciting things. Are there any questions for Yulia or Colby?
Do you want to make a speech?
60 other people got in.
All right, agenda item 12.0 is new business. I'm going to bundle 12.1, the meeting minutes of the January 19th, 2023 workshop, and 12.2, the meeting minutes of the January 19th, 2023 business meeting. Do I have a motion to approve them as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We are all here, so all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. All right, agenda item 12.3 is a motion to approve the 2023 school board goals. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Well, before I get to discussion, they're up here on the slide deck, the goals 1 and 2. Goal 1 is to collaborate with town council and the larger community to build the new primary school consistent with the building steering committee's goals and timelines and in a fiscally responsible manner. Action item to acquire land for the school, and a second action item to get the referendum passed. Goal 2 is to promote and grow a district-wide culture of trust, inclusion, and in collaboration. Action item 1, focus on effective communication with the community, staff, and students. Number 2, host 2 staff and student-centered workshops annually. And action item 3, consistent with the DEI committee's charge, promote diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels. And then goal 3 is to continue to strengthen student success, achievement, and well-being through ongoing development in all subject areas, district-wide student support opportunities, social emotional learning, and through district-wide DEI work. And the action item there is the superintendent will report quarterly progress on all aspects of academics, including those with benchmarks. Are there any discussion about the goals?
No discussion, but we said we were gonna try to put this on the website. Was that right?
Yeah, so the on the website right now are the current goals. Well, the goals that are up until tonight. So once they're approved, Kelly will update the website with the new
Okay.
goals. Yeah.
Great.
All right, all in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 12.4 are appointments. 12.4.1 is the Scarborough High School Strength and Conditioning Coach. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
Yeah, nothing bad there.
So moved.
Just an awkward silence.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's a unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 12.5 is a motion to approve the school board roundtables. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion?
I do want to add, one of the reasons why this came up in the first place was that we found that the time that we have our meetings and such might be an inconvenient time for a lot of our community members, that having these one-on-one or smaller intimate discussions for these occasions are just more comfortable for community members. And you're able to connect with them on a deeper level to discuss these matters such as the building and other things that might come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would personally like to see at least maybe the first couple be about the school building. I just we talked about it already, but the need for more communication around this building and to get people to where we are with the thought that we need to move forward with this consolidated school is really a necessity at this point. So that would be what I would like to see. I also had talked with Jillian about the potential of maybe doing them a little bit more often for right now, just while we're trying to get the word out about the school building. So I did.
Yeah, I think we are going to be also pairing with town councilors and the communications committee on the building steering committee. And so I think that would lend itself to an opportunity to have more frequent opportunities in various places that are convenient for people. We know that this particular issue is a whole community issue. I mean, all of them are, but this will be of interest to a wider audience, I think. And so I think also closer to referendum, we will need to have these opportunities for people again. So I don't know how you suggest we handle that, having like special opportunities for just the building, or just that's a suggested topic, but anybody can come talk about anything. And how frequent you would like to do that.
Yeah, and that's like my initial thought was that we potentially do something every 6 weeks or every month and a half. So that we're kind of touching people more frequently between now and November. Jillian and I also talked, maybe it's that it doesn't have to be here necessarily. Maybe we go to a restaurant, maybe we, there's restaurants around here that have good open space where we could go and meet. Kind of Jillian even had she was saying, like, come pick up your dinner and talk to us, right? Like things like that, just to try to meet people where they're at a little bit more than I think we've done before. Because this is, I think sometimes people think school and school board and they think that they have to have kids to be involved, and that's not the truth, right? We are, this project really, to Jillian's point, touches everybody in our community and everybody is impacted. So it's trying to find a way to meet people where they're at and have these really important conversations. Yeah. All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the school board roundtables? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 13.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Have a good evening.